What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Praying and Slaying podcast. My name is Aaron, your host, and today I have the awesome pleasure of speaking with Jason McCoy of ENDEX Archery, a gentleman that we got introduced to by HHA USA owner Chris Ham. He introduced us to Jason, told us we had to have him on the podcast, and so here it is. I'm stoked for this conversation. These guys get veterans integrated into the world of archery to help them with their PTSD and other things that they might be going through in their life as a positive outlet to take care of some of that stress. So with that, guys, we're going to get in with Jason McCoy and ENDEX Archery and hear about the awesome organization that they have, learn a little bit about Jason and his service as a fellow Air Force veteran, and I'm just stoked for this conversation. So let's get into it. All right, man. Well, everybody, welcome back to the Praying and Slaying podcast. We have Jason McCoy here with ENDEX Archery, and this organization basically gets veterans involved in the sport of archery to help out with their PTS lifestyle. You know, after being in the service, whatever they're dealing with, you know, good, bad, ugly, whatever. Archery is a great way to deal with it. And Jason put together a program to get veterans involved in that sport to help out with that sort of thing. So Jason, welcome to the podcast, man. We're really looking forward to this conversation. It's been a little while coming.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity and glad to meet you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. From what I understand, you're a fellow Air Force vet. So cheers to that.
Awesome. Well, I'll try to do my best for our brothers in blue. I will lead with a caveat that I'm still in the reserves. So, you know, anything we discuss here on the podcast, obviously these are my thoughts and my opinions. This is not endorsed by the Air Force. Or if we get into it, also same caveat for the FBI. So these are my thoughts, my opinions, not endorsed by any government agency.
You got it.
Yeah, but I guess the Air Force journey is the right way to start. And I'd say that my journey to the Air Force was probably like most people of our generation, right? We grew up on Top Gun and Saving Private Ryan and then video games, Tom Clancy, all that stuff, you know. But I knew from an early age that I wanted to join. Wasn't always the Air Force, but thankfully, and I say thankfully because I've had a great career, right? But my dad he spent 27 years in law enforcement. And that's kind of one of the natural transitions for a lot of veterans is going over to be a cop. So he worked with a lot of veterans, and I got a lot of good advice when I was in high school and ultimately decided on the Air Force. So I came into the Air Force with a guaranteed contract for one job and then found myself, you know, at the end of basic training with a completely different one. And I started my journey in security forces. You know, and I'm sure any veteran that listens to this, they've got a recruiter story or two. They try to bamboozle us all. But yeah, joined in 2007. You know, basic training at Lackland Air Force Base. Had a little bit of an incident. I had a brown recluse spider in my BDU blouse, and it bit me, and I got a pretty nasty staph infection from that. So I actually got to hang out in basic training for an extra 3 weeks until I finished out my antibiotics. So that was a blast. But headed over to Security Forces Tech School after that. And that really started my career.
That's awesome, man. Well, not awesome on the brown recluse deal, but yeah, I think the worst thing I saw at basic was scorpions between the sandbags when we go to, you know, the Beast Week or whatever they call it. You know, whenever you go to your 8 days out in the field or whatever. But 3 weeks. So did you get recycled back, or did you like have to start over, or did you just have to sit in sick ward, I guess, and then go through and finish out where you were in your class?
So I was considered a holdover. So I had graduated BMT. You know, I was called airman, and I had stripes on my uniform. I just couldn't leave. So most of my days consisted of hanging out in the, you know, in the Air Force, we call them TIs instead of DIs. They're training instructors, but they have like I guess you'd say their break room. There's some couches. There was a TV tuned into country music television. So probably 4 hours a day I sat just in there hiding. And then every now and then I'd go out, I'd get a random chore. I got to be a part of a couple pranks. There was a prank war going on between two TIs. And one day I'm sitting down there and this dude pops his head and he's like, "Hold over, come here." And I walk over and he's like, "I need you to go to the BX. He gave me some cash. He's like, "Here's some money. I need you to buy as much Elmer's glue as you can find at the BX." All right. So I jump on the bus, go over there, come back with like 2-gallon-sized jugs of glue. And we go into this TI's office and we pour the glue all over his desk. And then this dude's got a bag of like paper shreddings and we dump them out. and then he takes a couple cans of sardines and he tapes them. He uses like 2 rolls of duct tape to tape these sardines to this rival TI's desk chair. And we just like because they were at, so when I went through in '07, it was called Warrior Week.
Yeah.
But that instructor and his flight were out at Warrior Week, so they weren't coming back for like 4 days. So this dude came back to, and obviously Elmer's glue peels right off, but it's just a mess.
Yeah.
It's inconvenient. But the sardines just sitting there for 4 days in a hot room in Texas, I can only imagine. So that was cool.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh, but for me, everything kind of happens for a reason. And I was bummed, because when you graduate basic training, you're just ready to get onto your tech school and learn your job. One of the first people I met getting off the bus when I checked into the Security Forces Academy is my current wife. We've been
no way.
married, going on 17 years. And they say tech school relationships never make it, right? But
Right.
had I not been bitten by that spider, I wouldn't know my wife and I wouldn't have my 3 kids. So
Dude,
things work out.
you,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right?
man, we're gonna have to. I'm just gonna tell you now. I'm gonna book you for another podcast because that needs to be its whole own episode. Yeah, you're the glory story of a tech school relationship that made it. It's funny they preach all that stuff to you while you're in basic, and the TIs razz everybody. And we had a sister flight in our thing, so of course there was the natural thing going on. And
Yeah.
I bet, would you got 60 guys in a flight, 60 gals in a flight? I think that I know of. I think at least 10 like pairs coupled up after that. I'm like, when did you have time to talk to them to even get to know them? But they had the
Right.
same, they go to the same tech school and whatever, and man, hit it off. And yeah, and I think I don't know if there's a single one that made it. Like made it. I don't know how long those are supposed to last, but that's funny,
Right.
man. Well, that's cool. Yeah, you met your wife 17 years, got a few kids out of it. That's pretty incredible, man. Well, congratulations on that. And all due to a spider bite. And I've always been curious a little bit. So, like, I was a park ranger before. I did 6 years Air Force, then park ranger, and then out in Virginia we had black widows all over the place. But of course, like so you teach summer kids coming all the time. Hey, there's piles of wood outside. We're gonna be messing with them. Always look before you stick your hands places, whatever. Like, how bad is like? Did you know you got bit, or like I've always been curious, like what that feels, or kind of the process of that going through. So you're the first person I've ever talked to that's actually been bitten by one. Is it painful as hell, or
Yeah.
like what about it?
It's not. No. So I felt it. It felt like any other mosquito bite or small flying insect bite, right? Like you feel a little pinch, and then I remember slapping my arm, and that was it. And then it probably took about 2 or 3 days. And obviously, again, you're in basic, so you don't want to say anything. Um,
Yeah.
but it started getting really hard to extend my arm all the way, and then I had it looked like someone had cut a golf ball in half and stuffed it under my skin. That's what the welt looked like.
Oh wow.
Um, so I went to sick call one morning and they had to cut it open and drain it. And it was very nasty in there. And I still have a scar because they had to, it was just kind of eating away the flesh inside that area. So they had to pump me full of antibiotics, and then they had to, the cool part, uh, which is uncool. They gave me this prescription sized bottle full of this white like ribbon. And it was a type of medical gauze. And they gave me a pack of those like extra long Q-tips with a wooden stem,
Mhm.
and I had to twice a day pack, and you had to like fold a certain way that ribbon into the wound, and then in the afternoon you'd have to rip it all out and pack a new one. Um,
No way.
yeah,
Oh
so I'm sitting there in like the basic training dorms, and I feel like I'm doing surgery on my arm, but yeah, it didn't really hurt. No, it was just felt like a small bite, and then suddenly there's this huge bump, and got pretty gross after that.
yeah, no kidding, man. I've heard they're nasty bites, but I've always been curious. I'm like, did because some guys, they don't know it until they see like you said, they start feeling the after pain or the welt or whatever. And I'm just like, man, for something that's that painful, but I guess at the end of the day, it's a small spider doing it. So maybe the mosquito bite makes sense. But, well, that's crazy. Well, so, obviously, so you're still in the reserve. So you went active duty. How many years did you active in reserve, or have you always been have you always been reserve? How'd that work?
No, I was active duty for 12 years.
Okay.
So I spent about 2.5 years in security forces. My first duty station was Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, got a deployment to Afghanistan out of that gig. And when I came home from that deployment, I got reassigned to the armory. So I was, working law enforcement, security, and stuff. And then it just so happened the NCOIC of the Armory happened to like me, and they offered me a spot there, and that was a really good job. I got to start college there because we would work a month of days and a month of nights. So on night shift, it's just dead. You know, you arm up your people for the day, and then you have hours to clean weapons, take inventory, and really study and improve yourself.
Mhm.
So after a couple months in the Armory, which falls underneath the Air Force Combat Arms Program, I started looking that route. I've always liked guns. I grew up around guns. Um, and just getting to interact with those guys, I'm like, man, that's one of the coolest jobs in the Air Force. You play with guns all day. So very quickly put in a retraining package for Combat Arms or CADM. Got picked up, and I spent my next 3 years in the Air Force doing that. I got reassigned to Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama,
Mhm.
which was a really cool opportunity because it's the Air Force Center of Excellence for officers. And so you get to see, you know, the ROTC, the college students, when they do their summer field training, I think in their junior year, they come to Maxwell, and that's their first experience on a firearms range. So we had a massive 84 bay semi-enclosed range that we got to work. You had officer training school there. So you know, a lot of prior enlisted, but brand new officers going through training, and the Air War College, you know, and then the base populace. So we were also, the Air Force kind of spreads out its heavy weapons across certain locations, and they're kind of pre-staged, but you become a training center for that heavy weapon. So at Holloman, I got exposed to the 50 cal, the M2, and then at Maxwell, I got exposed to the Mark 19, the automatic grenade launcher. So
Oh,
I got to
wow.
go to a follow-on school at Lackland, the heavy weapons school. So just a lot of fun. We did our range training down in Killeen, Texas at Fort Hood. Um,
Mhm.
you know, but just some outside the box things, and that's what I try to preach to people now too. You know, I've got buddies whose kids are getting ready to graduate high school or maybe even college, and they're looking at the military. And if there's anyone who listens to your podcast, which I imagine there are, who you know, are younger and they think they may want a career in the military, I tell people go in and just leave your expectations at home, because you know, you could build up all these dreams for what you think your Air Force career is going to be. And mine, none of my dreams for my Air Force career came true. But by enjoying the ride and living in the moment, I've had a great career because there's so many opportunities that can come out of nowhere. And it doesn't matter what your job is. So taking advantage of those opportunities is pretty awesome. So yeah, as a combat arms instructor, I also got a deployment to the Middle East, and I thought I was going to go over there to run an armory overseas, and as it turns out, they needed an NCOIC for it was like a 30-person security section, and I also got to help out in security forces. We have the S2 section, which is our intelligence section. So I got to help those guys out and involved, you know, going off base, taking trips. You know, sometimes we would have people fly into a commercial airport in a foreign country, and so it wasn't like it's not like what you think on the movies. You know, we're not in a Humvee convoy with guns hanging out the window. Usually would be like an up armored Tahoe or something like that. But you get to go off base and maybe grab someone from the airport and come back. So again, just cool experiences that, um, you know, because I was motivated and tried to be good at my job and whatever I was doing, you just get recognized and get these opportunities.
Mhm.
So that seemed great. And then on that deployment, I got contacted by the 24th Special Tactics Squadron, which is the Air Force's um, Tier 1 component to JSOC. And there was a job that opened there to be a combat arms instructor for that unit. So, you know, you're arming and working on guns for some of the best guys in the Air Force, right? So I ultimately didn't take that job, but it kind of opened up my perspective to, okay, there's another level here. There's a next step. So I guess I would say simultaneously with that introduction, I was also introduced to Air Force OSI for the first time. And these guys are special agents. You know, they're federal agents. So on par with, you know, the FBI. And I guess that's the closest example because when OSI was created, they were modeled after the FBI. But that just seemed like a really cool job as well, and something more challenging and much more exciting. So I ultimately went that route. So at 5.5 years in, I'd retrained for the second time, and this time it was to Air Force OSI, which is where I still am assigned.
Very cool, man. Well, yeah, you've had a heck of a career, and like you said, just kind of leave your expectations at the door. Though I'm curious with that, like you said, leaving your expectations at the door and riding the wave and just ending up where you ended up with the opportunities that got presented to you. What you said you were guaranteed by your recruiter a job. What was the job that you were told you were going to get?
So in hindsight, I think it's a super cool job, and it would have been right up my alley because it's like being a professional Boy Scout, but it was a SEER instructor
Okay.
slash SEER specialist. But the idea of that was sold to me, and at the time, I signed my enlistment contract when I was 17. I was full of piss and vinegar and thought that I was joining the Air Force to personally cut the head off the snake of terror. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. I would, I could go back and ball.
I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah, I could go
Yeah.
back and ball that kid up. He was an idiot. But yeah, so I was basically sold SEER as the job of pararescue. I was told, hey, these guys go in and they rescue POWs, and which they do, right? They play a huge role in the Joint Personnel Recovery Center. Um, they they help people never get captured through the training they do. I think it is a really cool job, but it's not like the direct action role that I was sold. And so when I was in basic training, there was a program for anyone that was in the special tactics pipeline. So combat control, PJ, SEER, TACP, and I think EOD was with us too. Or actually, I know they were. And you got this little blue armband, you got some extra PT, but the cool thing about it was you got these breakout sessions that other basic training flights didn't get. So we would actually go to Medina, I think it was like every 2 weeks, and you'd have maybe a 2 hour block with the instructors who you were about to be underneath for their NDOC program and their training pipeline.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so it was like our second session of that sort with these SEER instructors that I realized that they're not deploying very much, and their job very much is to be a teacher out in Washington. And at the time, I was just like, oh, that job sucks. I don't want to just teach people. I joined to fight terrorism,
Right.
and wound up in security forces. But I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to love the law enforcement aspect of security forces. Um, I kind of knew because one of my training instructors was a security forces. They were a defender in the Air Force. So, they were proud of their job, and they talked about, all the guns, all the weapons qualifications you get to do as security forces. And the 820th Defense Group, which is an airborne unit for the Air Force. So I don't know, there was a lot of cool things about it that seemed very combat related. But once I got into the job and even in training, I found out, hey man, this law enforcement thing is awesome. My dad was a cop for, like I said, 27 years. So I thought I didn't want to do what my dad did. But it turned out I became very passionate about law enforcement. And that's ultimately why I made that decision for OSI.
No, that's very cool, man. Well, yeah, like you said, it's a heck of a ride, a little bit of a train difference or different track than SEER training, but no, that's super cool. I was a weapons troop, so I did F-16s in Iowa and then F-22s out at Langley. I was going to ask you, you said 5.5 years was like your transition timeline, so I don't think it lined up, but my wife went to ROTC through the University of Iowa. She's an officer right now, major, and she did the Maxwell field training or whatever they call it. I can't remember the couple 6 weeks or whatever they do down there. And I was going to ask if it overlapped, but I think she would have missed you by a few years probably. But
I was at Maxwell from I think it was 2011 to 2013.
okay, yeah, she would have been 2 or 3 years behind you then, after you were probably out of there. So, but yeah, man, that's a super cool ride. I mean, it's like you said, guns are right up my alley. So I think I always looked at those guys like the security forces guys. Like after being in basic training, and I was the weapons guys. We went to Wichita Falls right after. But everybody that
Mhm.
was active, they went and they get their job assignments down there at basic, and then they all find out where they're going. So all the guys that did the security forces route, or some guys ended up in the dog units, doing canine units, things like that, and just getting to watch like the cool stuff they got to do. I was kind of like, I mean, my job's cool, but like I would rather be out there on the firearm side of things or whatever, because same thing is kind of up my alley, and you get to see their follow-on training, and definitely a cool gig for sure. So, you said you grew up with guns. Has hunting always been something you've been into, or the outdoor side, shooting guns, that kind of stuff? Maybe your dad being in law enforcement, and then I'm going to ask the same question about archery. Obviously, ENDEX Archery is what you do. Like, how did you get involved in that? And tell us a little bit about your background with firearms and archery as growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up in South Louisiana. The hunting culture down in the swamps is very strong. It's, where I grew up, it was weird if someone didn't hunt. Um, so very much grew up with that, but I also grew up in 4-H and scouting. Um, I was in junior ROTC in high school, and we had a rifle team. So again, guns are part of the culture, hunting's part of the culture. My grandfather bow hunted when I was growing up, and I was always fascinated. I also found out at a very young age that, I think it was my great 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 grandmother was like a Choctaw Indian, and I just fixated on that. I thought that was so cool. Um,
Super.
and the Native American culture, at least in South Louisiana, it kind of intertwines with the scouting culture as well. Um, so yeah, bare bow archery, recurve archery, that type of thing through scouting and 4-H, but never really got into compound hunting until we PCSed from New Mexico to Alabama. At that time, I was like, hey, well, we're back down south. I'm going to start deer hunting again. And me and the wife went to Bass Pro Shops, and we were looking at guns. And at the time, we had a 2-year-old and 6-month-old twins. And she's like, you know what? I don't know if another gun in the house is a good idea, like with little fingers roaming around, until we get a safe. So we're like, all right, yeah, we'll get a gun safe first. And so I walked right next to the gun counters, the archery counter, and I'm just looking at bows. And this is in like November timeframe. Looking at bows, I'm like, hey, these are really cool. I'd always loved to bow hunt. And I just kind of made a mention of it, and we moved on. Well, a couple weeks later, I come home from work, and there's this like bow-shaped present wrapped underneath the Christmas tree. So my wife had gone back to Bass Pro and bought me a PSE Stinger, and that was my first bow. And a funny story there. So I could pull it back in the store, and air conditioned, wearing a t-shirt or whatever. But that December, when I opened it on Christmas Day or whatever, I go in the field across from our house, and I go to pull this thing back, and I can't get it back. And I think at the time it set at like 60 pounds, but you know how that goes. And
Yeah.
I just panicked because I'm like, oh, my wife bought me this awesome gift and I can't even use it. But then a quick YouTube video like the next day told me like, oh no, you just gotta unscrew the limb bolts and you're good to go. But that really lit a spark in me for bow hunting, for archery. I bow hunted that season unsuccessfully. I think I missed like deer, but shot almost every day. Just love shooting. And so that continued on. Our next duty station after Alabama was Alaska. So PCS'd up there as a brand new OSI agent. I'm working. We've got an archery range on base. And then in 2015, I got deployed to Afghanistan for the third time. I lost 6 of my teammates on that deployment. So came back from that deployment, kind of a mess. It's springtime in Alaska at this point. So should have been out fly fishing, hiking, whatever. Had no desire to do any of those things. Some of those early signs of depression, obviously a lot of survivor's guilt going on there. Just a lot of negativity. I'm looking down that dark hole that a lot of people have peered into as well. And one day, whether it was God hitting me over the head, I do, believe that. But for whatever reason, I decided I'm going to the archery range. I recognize the signs, and as much grief as we give the Air Force or any branch of the military on like the mandatory trainings, I'm thankful because I had heard it enough to recognize the signs of PTSD and depression. Then I said, hey, this is not healthy what I'm doing. I need to get outside. So I grabbed my bow. At the time, I was shooting a Matthews Creed, drove down the archery range on base, fired my first arrow, and I missed my target. And, that something just kind of snapped right there. Everything else disappeared, and I prided myself on being a good shot. So I just locked in, and I spent probably the next 2 hours just shooting targets at, 50 yards, 60 yards, or whatever. Shot until my back and my shoulders hurt, packed my bow up, and drove home. And I think the next morning is when I woke up and was like, well, that was the first about 2 hours in months that I hadn't thought about Afghanistan, and I hadn't thought about, my team. I realized there's probably something to this. So the next day, instead of staying in bed till 2 p.m. and getting drunk the night before or whatever, I got up and I said, I'm going to go shoot my bow again. And it happened again. My mind was clear and I could just shoot and be at peace. So I say the bow saved my life, but it also helped me recognize, like, hey, I if this is helping, then that means I need help. So I went to my commander. Thankfully, my commander at the time had been in a really bad deployment in Iraq. I think in like '09, was injured pretty badly and dealt with some of the stuff that I was dealing with. So he was very accommodating. He demystified all of the mental health questions I had, because as an agent, you carry a gun 24/7. You've got a top secret clearance. There's all these rumors that go around, and it's like, oh, if you reach out for help, if you go see mental health, they're going to take away your gun, they're going to take away your clearance, and they're probably going to lock you in a hospital. And it just wasn't the case. I talked to him about it. He assured me that's not what happened to him. Yeah, went to mental health on base and just had a conversation about what I was thinking about and what was going on with me. An hour was up, and they said, "Okay, you want to come back and see us next week?" And I was like, "That's it." There's no jacked guy in scrubs waiting to put me in a straitjacket. No, I went back to work. So it was through that process. And what I found though is at the time I wasn't ready for talk therapy. I wasn't ready for a lot of the things, but I was ready to listen. So I could sit there and I could listen to a doctor explain that what I was going through was normal, and explain how the brain worked, and explain that I needed time and I needed things like archery to allow my subconscious to process and work through some of that trauma from that deployment. And the bow was that outlet for me. So I just led with that. I kept shooting for the rest of that deployment. For the rest of that assignment. I then PCS to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And again, God stepped in. And I don't think it was a coincidence that, I find this house in a cul-de-sac, and there's 4 houses surrounding us. And day one, we're moving trucks there. I walk out and I'm wearing a Matthews Archery t-shirt. My new neighbor, this guy named Nate, goofy guy, he comes walking over. He's like, "Oh, Matthews Archery, you shoot bows?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, I shoot bows too. And so does that guy." And he's like, "And that guy down there, he's sponsored by Matthews." And I just found this community of archers like at my front door. And so it continued on, and I got really locked into shooting. 2019 rolls around and I'm deciding that it's time for me to leave active duty and pursue a job somewhere else, which turned out to be the FBI. And I'm I just want to fade into the shadows, right? I don't want a retirement party. I don't want to go on away. Like, I drank a couple beers with my buddies at the unit on my last day of work and was just like, peace. The next Monday, guys come in there like, "Where's Jay?" And they're like, "Oh, that dude got out, he ETS'd." But yeah, so I'd made it clear I wasn't doing anything. Well, 2 of my buddies that I was stationed with in Alaska, they had found that out, and unbeknownst to me, they had reached out to my wife. So that last day of work, I come home, I walk in the front door, and these 2 clowns are in my kitchen cooking dinner. And one had come from Texas, the other had come from Arkansas, I believe, at the time. So it was a cool surprise. We spent the weekend out on the front porch, sipping bourbon and just talking. And one of those guys is my co-founder, Ray Vickers. So cool thing about him is, he was also a security forces guy, then a CADM guy, then an OSI agent. But his track was a lot different from mine. He became a child forensic interviewer in OSI, and I think he was one of only like 3 in the whole Air Force at one point in time. But he's worked a lot of crimes against children, a lot of really evil stuff, right? You're staring straight into the darkness when you're working that. And so we're just on the porch, again, sipping bourbon, and he's asking me, "How are you doing? How's everything been since, Afghanistan? You seem better," type of thing. And I was like, "You know what, dude? Archery's been helping me a lot." And he's like, "Bro, me too." He's like, "And here's why." And we kind of started breaking that down and shared those similarities. So right after that, I go to the FBI Academy, and as soon as I graduated and got assigned here to Virginia, I think I'm like out of the academy for maybe a week. I call him up and I'm like, "Hey, bro, we're going to do this thing. Archery helps you. Archery helps me. We're calling an index and we're going to start helping people." And his response was like, "Cool. What do you need from me?" Like he was all in, no questions asked. So we start doing it. But about the 3rd person that I worked with and convinced them, "Hey, archery's going to help you. And, it's great for your trauma, all this stuff. Now let's go to the bow shop and you spend $2,000. That sucked. It made me feel terrible because just as soon as they pull their credit card out and I'd see the price, I'm like, no, there's got to be a better way. So
Yeah.
that's what led us to launch the nonprofit. You know, we're now a 501c3, and everyone who comes into our program, we pay for 100% of the cost for them to get started. So we're currently partnered with Matthews Archery for our bow sponsor. We still have some other bows lingering around that we're getting rid of, but in about 2 weeks, I'm going to have 17 mission switches in my hand, and those are going to heroes. We've got HHA Sights as a partner of ours. Chris Ham, one of the owners of that company, has become a great friend of mine. And one day he just asked me, "Hey, who's your sight sponsor?" I'm like, "Well, I really don't have one. You know, we get sights from a few different companies." And he said, "Well, you never have to worry about sights again." So
Wow.
Mission Switch with an HHA site, QAD has given us 17 rests, and they're a partner. Shrewd Archery wants to partner with us and to provide stabilizers. We're partners with Gas Bowstrings and America's Best Bowstrings. So that's another cool thing that we do, right? I'm in love with archery. I'm in love with helping people, but I'm also in love with this industry because of the community, the amazing community that it has created. But one thing that we like to do here at Index, you know, it's really fun for us, is to take two rivals like Gas Bowstrings and America's Best Bowstrings and have them come sit at the same table and show their equal support for veterans, first responders, law enforcement officers, or just your average Joe who's facing their trauma, right? Because veterans and first responders don't have a copyright on PTSD. That's where most people's minds go when you say post-traumatic stress. There's people who've never served that also are dealing with trauma. And sometimes those people don't want to speak out because they feel like their trauma is not valid because they didn't serve. You know, I had one of my ambassadors told me today, he's like, you know, Jesus didn't discriminate, and neither do we, because PTSD doesn't discriminate. It doesn't only attack service members. But all that said, we mostly focus on veterans and law enforcement officers because of the staggering suicide rates in those two communities. And I'm rambling a little bit, so let me wrap this up. So yeah, every one of our heroes, and that's what we call them, right? Whether it's a service member or just someone who's battling trauma, they're a hero to us. They come into the program, they get a bow, all of the accessories, vortex rangefinder, target, you name it, and then we mentor them for 6 months to a year or however long it takes to get them fully integrated into their local archery community. And that could be an indoor league, a 3D league, could be bow hunting. We partner with a lot of organizations that'll take guys on hunts. But our goal is to get them there, right? Teach them how to shoot and get them integrated, because for me, it's a triad. It's your mental and spiritual wellness up top. You know, your head, where's your head at? It's your physical wellness, because now we're getting you outside, we're getting you active. And then the biggest part is it's that social wellness. We're reconnecting you with a community that is supportive and uplifting. But that same camaraderie that most people miss about service exists in the archery community. I'm sure you've
Mhm.
been at a 3D target before aiming for a 12. You hit a 10, some guy's like, "Hey man, nice shot, but you suck. You should have been a 12."
Yep.
And then you laugh about it, right? You laugh
Yep.
about it, and that happens. And to see, you know, a veteran who hasn't been around that in forever, and when that exchange happens, you just see them light up, and they know, and you know, this is what they've been missing.
Mhm.
So that's what we're trying to bring people in the short term. Now, in the long term, we've got a great psychologist on our board now. We've got a lot of people with a lot of good experience. So our goal is to build a wellness center here in Central Virginia that includes archery ranges. But what I want to build is kind of a 5-day holistic wellness experience that's archery centric. So, you know, I can take a guy from anywhere in the country. Let's say my ambassador in Colorado sends a guy our way. Him, you know, 4 other guys plus 5 mentors. They all link up. Day one, they get to set up a bow. Um, we start teaching them how to shoot, and then about 2 hours in, they probably need a break, right? So maybe we roll into a group therapy session with a psychologist, and that might be their first experience with professional help. Or maybe we roll into a yoga session. Maybe we do an ice bath and a sauna treatment. You know, the
Yeah.
goal being when they leave there at the end of that 5 days, they have a bow and they have at least 2 or 3 other tools in their tool bag that they can go uh, to get that peace of mind and to help their subconscious work through that trauma.
Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. And that, so I checked out your website, and is that is there a name for that again? That 5-day window you were talking about?
Yeah. So we're calling it, you know, being military and acronyms that don't make sense, we're calling it EPIC. but it
That's
stands for
exciting.
the ENDEX Archery Proving Grounds,
Proving ground. There
EAPG.
we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. No, I saw that. And so that's a goal that you guys are working towards, and that's you haven't launched it quite yet, or is that something that's kind of launched? Or
No, we haven't launched it. So right now, all of our work happens one-on-one. We've got ambassadors in several different states, and a lot of the work's done here in Virginia with me and some of my local ambassadors. So very much one-on-one. This September, we are going to be hosting our first 3D shoot where we hope to bring our hero alumni, the guys we've been working with for the last 3 years, bring them all together with the archery community. And that's going to be the capstone of the Proving Grounds, is an open to the public shoot. But in the meantime, yeah, we're focused on raising money, and I guess my approach is we need to do the work first so that we can show not just the archery community, but show, you know, the companies across America the work that we do and the value that it brings to then attract those corporate sponsors. Because I think that's really what we're going to need. I mean, I'm looking for 100 acres plus cabins to house heroes and mentors, a bathhouse, and then a large indoor facility. Because sometimes here in Virginia, it'll rain for a week straight. So I need at least a 40-yard range so I can do the work. And yeah, it's going to take a lot. It's a very ambitious goal, but I think we can get there. And I think God's on our side. So how can we fail, right?
yeah, amen to that, man. That's pretty incredible. And I saw that the epic piece of that, and that was looked pretty sweet. So I'm excited for you guys on that. And like you said, God's on your side. Who can stop you? I think that's going to be pretty incredible. And you talked about a ton of awesome stuff there. But the partners you guys have already with Chris Ham, and I got a chance to have him on the podcast actually
Hmm.
already in HHA USA, and he was the one who introduced me to you actually, and just that dude. I mean, if you got him on your side again, there's just more power behind you. Matthews Bowes, I got to get somebody from them on, because hearing from you and Chris on those guys, just the mission behind what they do and being involved in the industry. So I've worked for going on 12 years now in the outdoors industry and getting to know the different companies and stuff. So you're always trying to pick and choose all the ones that you keep mental notes of all the ones that are behind certain things. And I know Matthews has got a good mission behind him out of Wisconsin there. But yeah, man, as far as, um, you talked about a lot. I got a whole notepad of notes over here. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to pick some, but no, one of the things I love that you said is you talked about the stigma of mental health and the firearms thing. And it can be military related. It can be, I mean, anybody that owns a firearm, there is that weird thing we all got in the back of our heads, like you got to avoid the crazy, or what we think of being crazy, to make sure that we keep that piece of our life safe. And then when you were saying it, it kind of hit me in a different way, I guess, is, being able to step out of your comfort zone and say, hey, man, I'm recognizing that I'm not okay right now, and I need to seek help, and I need to, being able to recognize that and then speak that's a whole nother level of health in general, that I don't think maybe we hide from it a little bit because we're afraid of what we feel might happen, versus saying, as a man or as a woman or anybody, in that situation, to step out and say, hey, you know what? I know myself enough to know that I'm not okay, and I know my situation's not okay, and I'm going to go seek the right help for it, because I want to keep myself okay, and my family and everything else that comes behind that. And then to hear you have that success, in a way, a success story of like, wait, none of the crazy stuff that I thought was going to happen happened. That's pretty
Right.
powerful. Like, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I never thought about it that way, but there's more power in telling somebody that you need help than there is in keeping it to yourself and thinking you're going to help yourself out of it somehow. Um, that was pretty cool. And then, I thought it was neat back in all the, like a ways back, you're talking about your great grandpa being, kind of your inspiration to the archery world. That's exactly how I got into bows. So just that hit home with me.
Hmm.
My grandpa always, like, growing up, my dad didn't hunt. Like, he'd tell random stories about going pheasant hunting with his uncle or something, here and there, but we never got out and did it. And then my grandpa, though, he always had a deer rack hanging in his barn, and there was a couple bows hanging up in the rafters up there too. And I just always thought that was neater than hell as a kid, and just going in there and
Yeah.
checking them out and stuff. Never really did much with it. And then I don't know, 10, 12, somewhere in that ballpark, finally asked him, hey, can I shoot that? And he's like, I don't know if they work or not. Let's take them to the shop, make sure they're safe, or whatever. And the strings were good. So we went out there, and I remember just like taking these bows and putting a box out and stuffing it with old t-shirts and stuff that they had around the house, and trying to hit it
Yeah.
and stuff. And then so my grandpa was kind of who got me into archery a little bit too, and he never shot bows, but he had them there for some reason. But anyway, yeah, fast forward, I'll never forget the first time I stepped into a real archery shop and I was getting ready to buy my first bow, and I'm used to just lobbing these arrows, at this box, and there's this huge arch and everything. And it was a Matthews, it was a prototype Shadow Cat, I think they were calling it that year. Basically, they came out, they called this bow the Martin Cougar, but
Mhm.
the one that I had was the Martin Shadow Cat, and it had limb saver rubber in all the riser holes. So that was the only difference at the end of prototype versus production. And I get that bow back, and I point it the 20-yard range down range, lift it up about 8 or 12 inches into the air, and pull the trigger on the release. I'm so used to lobbing arrows and stuff, and it shot it straight to the ceiling of the shop. And the
Yep.
guy was, "What the hell?"
What
And
are
my
you doing?
yeah. And my dad goes, he goes, "I think the bows he's been shooting don't have that much power." And he goes, "Oh, okay, no, you just point it straight at that wall, son. Go ahead and try again." And, but yeah, man, that's pretty neat though, having grandpas that lit a fire in you somewhere and got you down there. So that's
Yeah,
super
man.
cool, man.
Thank
Uh,
God for grandpas.
that's it. Absolutely. There's a couple country songs about them too that are coming out now.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So, just out of curiosity, your job settled you in Virginia, and then was there anything else about Virginia that drew you to start Index there, or is it just kind of the timing of everything? And our first
Uh,
invitation was Langley, I guess. So I'm kind of curious about the Virginia stuff.
yeah, it really was. It's all God's timing, when I learned in the FBI Academy that I was getting assigned to Virginia, initially I thought I was going to Richmond field office, which was my main field office. But a few weeks later, I find out, hey, you're going to, every field office has small satellite offices in different cities. You say, hey, you're going to Lynchburg. And the only Lynchburg that I knew of was Lynchburg, Tennessee. And I said,
Yeah.
how that's pretty far away from Richmond. Like, how does Richmond own that area, AOR? And they're like, no, man, Lynchburg, Virginia. Like, never heard of it. And they're like, you never heard of Liberty University? And I'm like, no. And they were like, oh man, well, what do you like to do for fun? Or no, I said, what's there? What's in Lynchburg, Virginia? They said, what do you like to
Yeah.
do for fun? I was like, oh, I like to hunt, fish, camp. And they already knew. I think I met whoever was telling us. I probably had a dip of Copenhagen in at the time, so he already knew. Like, oh, I camp, I fish, I hunt, I hike, all that stuff. And he's like, everything you like to do is there. And he wasn't
Perfect.
wrong, man. This is so I'm literally 20 minutes from the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Appalachian Trail, Blue Ridge Parkway, all of that. It's just a beautiful area. But again, we have Liberty University here. And so this area is just this pocket of Christian goodness. There are so many believers. I mean, you can spit in any direction and probably hit 7 churches. And it's just that lends to a really wholesome community. My wife and kids are thriving here. We've made really good friends, great connections. But again, it made starting Index very easy because I also live in a very giving community. And they support what we do. They're very patriotic. They support first responders. So it just everything kind of lined up, and I couldn't have planned it this way myself. And it's just further evidence of that. So the whole Matthews Bow partnership came up, and I love telling this story because it's still so new. So this year we'd set a goal to work with 20 heroes. And we always try to break those goals. We want to shatter that, but at least on paper, our goal is 20 heroes. I had been in talks with a couple other bow companies for like a partnership. People got to understand this industry too. When I'm talking about a partnership, it's not free bows. Very few people in this industry get free bows, and bow shops, their markup on bows is only a couple $100. These
Mhm.
things are expensive. There's a lot of engineering. There's a lot of patent costs that go into these things. So finding a bow partner and asking for free stuff is very hard to do. But I've been in talks with several different companies, and stuff would just fall through based on the industry, the economy, whatever it is. They're just like, hey, we want to support you, but we just can't right now. So no fault on them. But Chris Ham and a couple other people had asked me several times, like, hey, man, you should be reaching out to Matthews. And for me, it's like, we're only 3 years old. Who am I? No one knows who I am. No one knows what Index is. They're not going to partner with me. They probably won't even see my email. But eventually, or just two months ago, or maybe it was last month. I went up to HHA USA, and Chris again was like, "Hey, you need to reach out to Matthews. That's who you need to partner with. They're just doing so much good stuff," and they are. So I gave it a shot. I sent an email, and then I reached out to my local dealer and said, "Hey, can you help me as well? Maybe Squeaky will get the grease. Can you reach out and let's see if Matthews will partner, because every other company has kind of fallen through." And he says, "Yeah, I'll see what I can do. What are you looking at?" And we have recently won a grant from the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources. So we had some money to spend. And my goal was to partner with a company to maximize those funds. Because sure, I could take that money and go buy a couple bows at MSRP, but maybe there was a deal to be had. So I explained to Chris Reed from Reedy's Archery in Virginia what I was looking at. And I'm expecting maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 bows out of this deal. And he says, "Yeah, I'll call you back next week when I get a hold of him." So I hang up the phone. I call Ray, my co-founder. Anytime that I make a move, I'm calling him because we're just excited about this. We love it. And he and I are on the phone. I'm like, "Hey, man, they're going to reach out to Matthews." I send the email. Let's pray that this happens. And my phone rings, and it's Chris Reed calling back. And he has no idea what our goal is or how many bows we need. But he says, "Hey, man, yeah, they pick up the phone right away. I explained everything to them, and they're willing to partner up. And for what, the amount of money you have, they can do 17 bows." That's the exact number that I need. Our goal is 20. We've already worked with 3. I needed 17 bows. So my hair stands up a little bit, and I'm like, man, that's got to be something. So I hang up the phone with Chris, and I call my buddy Wayne, who works at the shop with Chris. And Wayne's a retired police officer, and him and I get along real well. But he's also a strong believer. And I say, "Wayne, man, this just happened. Matthew said yes, and we needed 17 bows, and they're going to give us 17 bows." And he goes, "Jay, do you listen to the Mountain Tough podcast?" I said, "No, I don't." And he goes, "I'm sending you the episode right now." He said, "You need to listen to it right now." So he sends it over. I sit down on my little outdoor couch on the back porch, and I'm listening. And there's like a good 30-minute stretch in this Mountain Tough podcast where Matt McPherson, and the podcast had come out, I think, like that day or the day before. Anyway, Matt McPherson's on the podcast, and the theme is him talking about the amount of times God has used the exact number in his life to show that he's working. And I just got chills again every time I tell the story, because to me, that's undeniable. For those connections to happen, that's not a coincidence, right? And while I'm on the topic, there was another time here recently, we were preparing to go to Total Archery Challenge, and we have to pay for booth space there. Even as a nonprofit, you got to pay. Every Sunday, we have a team meeting where everyone for ENDEX, all of our ambassadors and stuff, we get together on teams and we discuss business. And I hang up with that meeting. We're talking about the bills we got to pay, and I'm looking at ENDEX's account at the time. This is right before we got the grant, and we're broke. We had used all of our money last year on projects. I'm like, man, how are we going to pay for these booths at TAC? I know we'll make the money once we get there, but we got to get there. And so that night before bed, I'm praying, and I'm still worried and stressed about this. And I had to stop myself because I also still work a full-time job. ENDEX is supposed to be something I'm doing to relieve stress and to help people. It's not something that I should be stressed out about. I need to give this to God. I need to put this at the feet of Jesus and just let him take care of it. So that's what I did. I prayed that night. I gave that worry over to Jesus, and I woke up the next morning and somebody had made a $700 donation on PayPal. So it comes across our account as $690, but and I have to go back and look and see if it was the exact number, but I definitely had enough to pay the bill. And I was like, incredible, overnight, problem solved. I just needed to stop worrying about it and give it to God.
Yeah.
But I feel like he was saying, "Hey, I'm not done yet," because that afternoon, and I'm living on a high all day. I'm like, this is the best day ever. God did this for us. But that afternoon, I get this random phone call from a guy, and it's a guy that I know. But he says, "Hey, man, you don't know this about me, but my family actually runs a foundation, and I've been following what you guys do. We've been helping out this other group, but they've now outgrown us, and they're getting support from like some NFL teams or something." He said, "So I want you to write a proposal, give me some numbers on, what certain amounts could do for you in ENDEX. And I'm going to take this back to the board." And we're talking about a very substantial donation, and potentially a continuous donation coming from this foundation out of nowhere. I was not even tracking this, wouldn't even have known to ask for it, and here it is. So again, when I say, the proving grounds is going to happen and we've got God on our side. Now, my vision for the proving ground, maybe that doesn't come to fruition because it's ultimately it's going to be God's decision and it's his thing and it's his timing. But I know something incredible is going to happen there.
Man, that's yeah, you had my hair standing up on the back of my neck a couple times there too, man. That's the coolest part I think with God being involved, he's involved in everything, whether we like it or not. But the times where we get the chance to realize he was absolutely involved and had his hands in something, that timing was his and everything, is like, there's just absolutely no denying that there is 0.0000% chance that we had anything to do with it, and that all the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed in the exact timing, man. So that's cool. And then the podcast that your buddy was listening to, and we're like, dude, you got to listen to this because this dude just said that, like all of that comes together, man. And you hit him at the same exact time to probably impact something in his life too, where that number meant something. And he's like, holy cow, you got to be kidding me. The dollars they have to spend is worth this much. Like, because to him, that just lit a light bulb in whatever he had going on.
Yeah.
That is so cool, man. And then I love that you kind of mentioned too that Chris Ham was like, dude, you got to reach out, you got to reach out, you got to reach out. But then I think sometimes, just on the face side, like, I know for me, there's times I can't, it's really hard to discern whether you're putting something off, or you just don't know if something's the right timing, or you can't really tell if you're like resisting something that you should be doing or not. And then like some sort of a breakthrough just happens, and it's like maybe it just wasn't quite the right time. So I didn't have the clarity, or I didn't have the, God maybe didn't give me the confidence to make that decision yet, or make that phone call, or do this until just the right time, when you finally felt that urge to finally just say, you know what, I'm taking the hat off, I'm going to do it. And then bam, it just was like, okay, then the snowball effect happens. And that's just pretty incredible, man, to hear that story and what you guys are doing. And yeah, there's no denying your guys' ENDEX dreams are going to come true. So that's pretty darn cool, man, to see it that far and what you guys have going on. And you mentioned too the exact number for your donation, or really close to it, for the total archery thing. I totally forgotten about this. I had a camera one time that I was, my very first Light the Fire Outdoors, which was, my business side of what praying and slaying is, and the podcast and stuff. But way back in the day when I was all fired up, same thing, just young and dumb and whatever, I think I'm going to be this outdoor TV show one day, is kind of how my vision of this started. And I bought a camera off eBay, and it was a Panasonic big old film camcorder, and it took these little tiny tapes, and it was right at the time that DVDs were like the thing, or the mini thing. So I didn't realize it. Thought I was cool because I had a camera, but I was already behind the technology curve, so it actually sucked, and I couldn't edit anything and whatever. Well, then I finally was saving up the money to buy like a DSLR camera to kind of take my film game to the next level. And I was lucky enough, the gal who was now my wife at the time was my girlfriend. She goes, you don't need to be buying anything until you sell that other camera off. And I'm like, there's just no way. Like, no one's going to buy this. Like, yeah, the reason I want to get rid of it is because it's not the right camera. Like, no one has a use for this. Like, but she was right. And I knew she was right. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I put it on eBay, was trying to sell it. And I had all this extra stuff to go with it. And I needed an exact dollar amount to get the other camera that I wanted to get. And it came down. I was literally watching. There was like 3 hours left in the bidding, 0 bids, no dollars coming in. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this thing. And I woke up the next morning and someone had bought it with 3 minutes left at the exact. They didn't even like put in a lower bid. They did the exact dollar that I was asking. And just that same random stuff. I mean, a little bit different, but I was just like, the way that stuff just works out. And I've always been kind of curious. And like my mind was like, was that my mom, or was that my dad? Like, they just kind of knew, and they just never told me, that they bought it. But
Yeah.
that's just, it's neat when that stuff happens, because you're kind of like, it's a little bit of a head scratch, but you're like, okay, like, let's take the next step now.
It happens. And, I find that those stories are very abundant in this community, archery community and the outdoors community. I do think it's a special place. And that's another reason why it is so healing for people. We're out in the great outdoors enjoying God's creation. But I want to take just a second to highlight some more of this community. And I'll start with the industry itself, because Matthews, I've always been a fan of Matthews, and I think their partnership right there, for me, it's like coming home, because the Matthews creed is the bow that I say saved me. And so that's really impactful for me. But they're doing so much good stuff. People, it's very easy to get caught up in the negativity that you see online and on Facebook, and a new bow drops and people are saying, oh, it's so expensive and Matthews has robbed us. When you actually take a look at Matthews as a company and the good that they do, Matthews is an archery company that funds God's work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at their mission line and the work the proceeds from mission enable Christian missions all over the world, and a lot of good work. Uh, there's a movie coming out very soon called The Light of the World. It's an animated film about Jesus and the disciples. Matthews produced that film. That's like $20 million to make that film.
Oh, wow.
Not to mention their partnership with us and hundreds of other nonprofits. I've met Joel Maxfield and spoken with him at length. I think I have a pretty good read on the guy, especially based on my background and the profession that I had. I kind of pick people out, right?
Yeah.
He's a humble, modest guy. He's not balling out of control because they're selling these expensive bows. Matt McPherson's the same way. But then the rest of the community as well. Look at Hoyt Archery and what they did for Operation Pay It Forward 2 years ago with the battle worn finish and the money that went to that. Look at now Bowtech and Darton getting behind Folds of Honor, another great charity that provides scholarships to the wives, sons, and daughters of fallen heroes. Darton's putting scripture on their limbs. The Easton Archery Foundation, Easton's a huge partner of ours, the only American-made arrow in the world. The amount that they give, the Lancaster Archery Foundation. Then we get to the people in this community. And a really cool story. It's floating around right now on YouTube because Podium Archer captured this on film. But when we go to TAC, we do raffles to raise money. And we usually give away a couple bows. And it's kind of our thing now is to build a really, really sick setup to give away to someone. So this year we had an RX-8 with Excel landslide, CVE bars, fully decked out, quiver, go sticks, 3 sets of strings, thanks to our partners. And, so it's about a $3,500 package. This dude wins the bow in the raffle, shows up to pick it up. We're taking pictures. We're talking about how sick the bow is. And he turns to me and he goes, "This is a great bow, but I don't want it." And I'm looking at him like, "What?" And he goes, "I want you guys to give this to a hero."
No way.
And dude, I had to step away. Like I start tearing up. I'm getting choked up. I can't talk. My co-founder's there to step in and he's getting choked up. And we're like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I'm fortunate. Give this bow to a hero." And we actually had a need in Ohio for a bow because our bows from Matthews haven't arrived yet. And we had 2 people in Ohio, a cop and an Air Force pararescueman that both needed bows. And now that mission was fulfilled. But who does that, right? Who goes to an archery event, wins a $3,500 bow package, and then gives it right away?
Yeah.
Archers do, right? This community does. There's some good people in the gun community, but I don't see people winning, a Tikka rifle or a Daniel Defense AR and saying, "All right, we're going to donate this." No, they take it home and they use it, and as they should. That's my intent for giving it away. But it's just really touching and awesome that this community does that sort of thing day in, day out.
No, that's incredible, man. Yeah, it's one of the coolest things to see when and the coolest part is, he probably walked away buying that raffle ticket knowing your guys' mission in his heart. And I'd be curious to talk to that guy and be like, did he leave that booth knowing that, hey, I'm probably not going to win this, but if I do, I don't need it, but I want to support a good cause. Like his point of buying the raffle ticket was beyond, I hope I win that bow. That's obviously the trigger that, it's cool to have some cool stuff to buy raffles, but that's so neat. And then I was just had Bailey Taylor from NWTF on one of the podcasts going to be coming out after this one or before this one. But anyway, she was talking about, she's on merchandise management team and all the fundraising event pieces that they get and all the products and stuff that they bring in for their banquets. And her and I got to talking about one of the coolest things to watch if you've never even been to like a conservation support. So it goes back to the outdoorsman community and the sportsman community. Is you get these people in the room, and usually there's a handful of beers and usually some bourbon involved and whatever. But you get these guys that have sponsored a table, or maybe it's a competitive businesses in the same room or whatever, right? And towards the end of the night, they bring out, that's when they do the live auctions. And I remember the couple Pheasants Forever events I've been to, they one was a youth shotgun for a 4-H club. They were just raising money for the 4-H club. The shotgun was supposed to go, to whoever bought it that night, but the money was going there. It went to like it was I don't know, maybe a $600 shelf value shotgun in a double barrel over under, and they end up buying it for $1,000 the first time. And then the guy goes, he goes over, the guy hands it to him, whatever. Yep. And he gives it back and he says, do it again. And so then the next table over bought it at like $2,500. And then he did the same thing, gave it back. They raffled it off. I think it was like at $4,500 by the time they were done with it. And then what they did at the very end, the guy that ended up with it at $4,500, he said, hey, I want you to donate this to the whoever needs a shotgun on your club team, because I want them to be shooting with it this year. So it didn't even the shotgun never left the room. It gets
Wasn't
donated
about the
back to
gun.
some kid that probably needs it, whatever. It's the neatest thing, like you said, to watch people get together, gather around and say, hey, you know what, like, we're here for a reason. We're here to support something bigger than us. And then how they just completely give it back. Like there's no other purpose other than to say, hey, you know what, this is going to a better cause. And that's cool. That's really cool with the bow too, because like you said, there's not a lot of people that would probably go, I just want this $3,500 setup. If they're not going to shoot it, they might part it out or something, but to give it back to a vet, or someone who needs it, that's really cool.
What's up, guys? It's Aaron, and this podcast and the Praying and Slaying Podcast Network is brought to you by DEADNUTS Outdoors. 100% made in the USA 2D archery targets. That's right, I said 2D. These things weigh less than a pound, and they bring your backyard backstop to life with a full-size animal. They have elk, antelope, mule deer, whitetail, you name it, they've got it, and it allows you to shoot at the most realistic archery target on the market to prep you for the real shot of a lifetime this season. Go check them out at www.deadnutsoutdoors.com, and if you want 10% off your order, they are awesome partners of our podcast, and you get 10% off by using the link in the show notes on your DEADNUTS archery order. It's season's here, guys. Get ready. Get out there, check out DEADNUTS, and start practicing on a real life animal instead of just a dot for this season. Hit the dot, not the spot. Hit it. DEADNUTS. All right, let's get back to the episode.
And then on that same note, so it worked out that tomorrow I'm actually going to be meeting one of your ambassadors, Nathan, down at Austin Archery Club here in Texas, and I have two bows that through my podcast with HHA USA, Chris Ham, I've been kicking around. I've held on to these bows for years. I shot them for a few years, and then the first one I held on to as a backup, because I had somebody one time tell me, hey, you should probably use a backup if you're going to travel to hunt. You never know what could happen, blah, blah, blah. So I kept it as a backup, never touched it like I thought I probably wanted. Well, then my other, they're Martins. So I had another one that a buddy and I worked out a trade on something. And so then that became my second backup, and I really like shooting it. So I've never gotten rid of it. And then, fast forward now, I'm just like at a point where I'm like, okay, we keep moving. Every time we move for the Air Force, like these bows get packed up. I'm nervous the movers are going to do something to them, to be honest, every time. It's more of a stress than it is anything. Yeah. And, that I had a hard time in Maryland. There was just something weird. Like, I'm like, I just don't want to sell these. Like, I just can't bring myself to sell them. I listed all my gun stuff, my scopes, my everything I just didn't need anymore. I went through my hunting stuff completely, and the bows stayed there for some reason. I couldn't figure out why, but I was just like, something was weird about selling them. And it was just in my heart. Like, I was like, I don't know why, but I just don't feel right selling these. And then anyway, fast forward, record an episode with Chris Ham. And long story short, immediately he brings up you guys, and it just clicked. And I was like, dude, I literally was just down there again in the basement before this podcast, looking at these things. I took all the pictures. I was like, at a point, I'm going to force myself to get rid of these bows. And then he tells me about you guys and your mission and what you guys do with getting bows out there. So you've partnered with Matthews, which I think is incredible. Now I'm a little nervous because I've got two Martins sitting here. I'm about to hand deliver tomorrow to Nathan. So you still have a use for bows? Like, how do people, if they've got a backup bow they're not using anymore, maybe they're looking to upgrade their bow this year and they've got another one that could possibly go to this and they feel called to do it. Like, do you guys still have open room for donations? You've partnered with Matthews. How does that work?
Absolutely. And that's one thing with us, any partnership, it's never going to be an exclusivity deal for us. Just because, one, we want other companies and other people to be able to also show their support for heroes through us. But two, how can I turn away a donation, turn away a gift, and turn away a potential life change, right? So yeah, we're getting the bows from Matthews, and we're very appreciative for their partnership. But we started by refurbishing used bows. And I never want to lose that part of our mission, because I also think there's something special, especially for the person like you, anyone in our archery community When you see your old bow get handed to a hero, and then 4 months down the road, you see our Instagram again, and now we're at a 3D shoot with that hero, and or they just won the Reinhardt 100 with your old bow. Um, I like to think that's a gift to you. There's a feeling that comes attached to that, and I love that we can bring that to people and show them that spirit of giving. And that's the purpose for our partnership with Gas Bowstrings and America's Best Bowstrings, is we put new strings on those bows if they need them. So to answer your question, if anyone wants to get involved, we do have ambassadors in several states. You can always send bows to Virginia. But if you have a bow that you think, hey man, this would be a killer first bow, it's not a brand new bow, and we've had those donated to us as well, but it doesn't need to be, right. But as long as it's got some modern technology, and you think it's comfortable for someone getting into archery to shoot, and you would like that to go to a hero, yeah, reach out. You can donate those bows, and we'll get them into the hands of a hero. My first bow, again, 2011, was a PSE Stinger. That bow is still a good bow. Someone can shoot that bow. I've got a Matthews Helium hanging up in the garage right now that I just need a new string for. Great bow. And for someone's first bow, that is a killer first bow. Performance wise, a lot of the older flagships that we get, it could be 9 years old, but it's going to outperform even the current model, budget bow that's out there that only shoots 290 feet per second or whatever. So we definitely appreciate your donations. You shouldn't feel bad about that at all. We do have the partnership with Matthews, but that used bow giving is very special to us, and it always will be.
No, that's awesome, man. I love that. At the end of the day, it's like, well, like you said, the God moments. It was just like one of those things. I'm like, and the fact that I was just down there, I just got done taking the pictures. I'm like, oh, I got to get upstairs and record this podcast with Chris. And then the very end of the podcast, he gets to this, and I'm just like, okay, there we go. Like, that's
Well,
why it was this weird thing.
and for me, I love how it worked out, right? Because you and I were going to link up when you were driving through. We were going to link up in Virginia, and you were going to
Yeah.
give me the bows. But
Yep.
now you have the opportunity, because Nathan moved down to Texas. So he was an ambassador in Ohio, and he PCS'd to Texas. So now you get to give those bows to him, but potentially you might get to work with the heroes that are going to shoot your old bow, And I think,
Yeah.
if you're up for that, I think you would love the experience. You'd walk away from that experience so full, and you would definitely say, hey man, that was much better than me having a backup over this thing sitting in my basement. Like
Yeah.
when you see, because we are selective in the heroes we pick. It's not, we get a lot of requests for, hey, I would love a new bow. And we're not that nonprofit, right? We're about finding people who've never even considered archery and
Mhm.
introducing them to the sport. So that's one of our first qualifiers. But then we also have to make sure that archery is going to be right for you, because unfortunately, there's some people that I'm not qualified to help. There's some people who need more help, and some of those people have substance abuse problems. And if I hand you $1,000 bow setup, $2,000 bow setup, you might just turn around and use that for something that's just going to further abuse you. You pawn it, you buy drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's selective, but because of that process, when we hand these heroes the bow and they start shooting, in that first arrow, you just see them light up, and you just know in that moment, hey, this person's life has changed. They're on a new trajectory now. Dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. I'm
No.
so grateful that, that I'm passionate about this and that I get to do it.
Heck yeah, man. No, that's super cool. And there's definitely a light there. Yeah, to your point. I mean, we haven't talked about that on this podcast. Yeah, I was supposed to meet you on the way it was just going to work out our travel route. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the way I wanted it to work out if I wasn't going to meet you, but our Ram blew a piston an hour and 45 minutes into our 20 some odd hour drive to Texas, and that truck's still in Virginia. We ended up salvaging it
Mm.
out there. So I didn't get to meet you, unfortunately, but yeah, random turn of events. Now we're picked back up. We're here, and we get to go down to Austin and shoot some bows tomorrow with your ambassador Nathan here. I'm super stoked to meet. The little guy's gonna be with me tagging along, so hopefully he lasts a little bit in the field. But yeah, man, like you said, that'd be super cool. And then one of the things that we wanted to do, I've been brainstorming on this after I got to learn about your mission, and I knew that you guys gift these archery setups. There is, I would like to So everything Life for Outdoors and Praying and Slaying, we have a 10% fund. No matter what we make, whether it's merch or whatever, or the business funds for consulting that we do and things like that, it all goes into a pot. And our mission is veterans conservation, community outreach projects. So we try to find something local to what we're doing wherever we're stationed. And this opportunity, obviously the bows are a donation, but I thought, okay, like how could we get involved maybe at a deeper level? And I don't know if it's possible or not. We'd like to. I don't know how you guys work this process. Maybe you could help me with it, but we'd like to provide a boat, like the furnishings to these. So they come with a rest on them. Both of them have a rest, but they don't have sights. Or anything else they might need, stabilizers, whatever. I just don't have that extra equipment on there to donate with it. Is there a way to let's say if someone's got an extra bow sight, they don't have a bow, or for example, or like how does someone go about that stuff? Are you in the market for that kind of equipment too, or just bows?
Yeah, accessories are still huge for us because, like I said, we have those partnerships, but also I recognize. So Chris Ham, for just example, right?
Yeah.
He gives me bow sights, but I don't want to abuse that relationship. And I also know that Chris also supports another similar nonprofit of mine called Dust Off, where they refurbish bows for heroes. Um,
Oh, very cool.
so I can't ask him for 1,000 bow sights. What's reasonable here? So we still do ask people, if you have bow sights you want to donate, stabilizers, rests. We have a partnership with Easton, but that's not an unlimited supply of arrows.
Right.
So arrows are helpful. So yeah, anything, any equipment that people have. And I don't know, I don't want to sound ungrateful here, but we've also gotten from some people, it's like, hey, well, I've had this box under the table and it's 30 years old at this point. Let me just donate it because I want to get rid of it. What we ask is if it's good and usable, it doesn't need to be, an Excel driver and an HHA Nitrix, but I want it to provide a good experience for the archer, because we want their first experience in archery to be fun, and we want their setup to be reliable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we ask for lightly used equipment or equipment that's still in good working order and somewhat modern. But
Okay.
yeah, if people have stuff to donate, and again, use your judgment. I think people listening to this are going to be archers and outdoorsmen. They know the value of good gear, and they should be able to know, hey, man, this is a great site. I'd love to donate this. And we're forever grateful for that, and can assure you it's going to be put in the hands of a hero.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, because I think one of the things I was thinking on that is like maybe we'll partner with like a local shop or something, and just either pick out a site or value of a site, and then maybe offer a gift card to a local archery shop that this person happens to be local to, and then they can accessorize their bow that way. Where like I said, the bow is one thing and the rest is one thing, but then there's, like you said, you walk into a bow shop and you walk out $2,000 later and you finally got quote unquote everything you need. And the best archery advice I ever got was from the guy I bought that first bow from, and he just said, "Always walk in with a budget and never spend more than it, because you'll always be able to spend more on a bow." And he said, "Never get
Yeah.
your wife involved in something you don't want her to be better than you at," which we've been pretty good at. My wife's interest is moderate at best in archery. She'll shoot and do like total archery, but then the
Yeah.
bow sits for the next 2 years until we go again. So, but
Oh
no,
man. So I came home from work today. As I'm pulling into the driveway at the end of our road, we have a range set up, and my wife was already out there shooting. And one, I was super excited about it because I love seeing her shoot. But I was
yeah,
on the phone with Ray at the time, and Ray's like, oh, she's trying to get better than you. You better get out there, man.
exactly right.
That's
Yep, that
awesome.
practice makes a
Yeah.
difference, man, for sure.
Well, the
No,
bow shop idea works too. We have partnered with bow shops to get some of these missions completed. And if you know of a great bow shop who's willing to work with us, and sometimes they'll throw in free range time for the hero. Hey, here's a free year of range usage, or sometimes they'll throw in a target that then we don't have to provide. So some of the bow shops we worked with have been really great. And that's an option for you too. If you meet up with Nathan, you guys want to get these bows outfitted, there's always the option to, give me a call and I can pay over the phone for whatever it is. Because we're always accepting donations, monetary donations. People can donate online at indexarchery.org. And we've been really fortunate through that too. So yeah, we've got a couple different mechanisms. And as we grow our ambassador program, if people have a need in their local community, if they see a need for something like ENDEX, you can reach out. and become an ambassador and grow this mission in your local community.
Yeah, man. Heck yeah. That's well, that was one of my next questions actually. So on the ambassador side of things, how does that work? Like how does if someone's listening to this, I personally, man, I'm interested. Like how do you get involved to be an ambassador? Is there a requirement to be, like Nathan's here in Texas, but I know he's still active from what I understand. So he'll probably
Mhm.
bounce one day. My wife's active duty, so we're going to be bouncing around. If I was going to get involved, like what's the requirements to be an ambassador? And then like how does all that process work?
Yeah, so there is an application process and an interview, because we have to ensure that one, you're going to be able to coach. You don't need to be USA Archery level 1 or any of that stuff, but we do have to have the feeling that you can effectively introduce someone to the sport competently and safely. Um, the other big thing is you need some level of understanding of what we're doing. The power of archery, the therapy behind it. Um, we need to know that you're also bought in on these processes. Um, we've had people reach out and all they want to know is, well, what kind of discount codes do you get if you're an ambassador? And that's not what we're about. We have very few discount codes. We had some companies offer them to us, and in some cases I turn them down because I want to support those companies and it's not about a discount for me. Um,
Mhm.
and so the benefit of being an ambassador again is you believe in the mission, you're willing to grow it in your community and help us build towards the proving grounds, and you want to help people out. So I would say it's less about location and more about the person applying.
Okay. No, very cool, man. That's yeah, that's powerful too. And like you said, I mean, just working in the industry from a company perspective, like sitting, at different companies I've worked for, I've been the guy that usually handles the inbox that has to do with people reaching out for things, and it's actually kind of surprising too, even on like veteran organizations specifically. There's a ton of them out there, and I think they probably all started in a good place, but there's a there's a lot of that even that happens like outreach from an organization, and I'm not at all grouping you guys into this, but there's organizations out there that'll reach out and like if you can't provide 100 of your products for their pro staff only to test or whatever, that they don't want anything to do with your company to support the veterans that they supposedly support. But then on the flip side too, like the discount code thing, if someone's reaching out for that, their heart's probably not in the right place for what you guys are ultimately trying to achieve, and that's not the right ambassador slash pro staff program for them. There's discount
Right.
programs out there. Go direct with the company. They probably have one if you're interested, but yeah, definitely a different ballpark for sure. And even the other day, a couple stories, I guess, on the vets is there's a gentleman at the local shop here in Harker Heights slash Colleen. I think it's the only one out here knocked and loaded. But there was a dude in there, and I think he just gotten outfitted with his very first bow ever. And or set up whatever, and he got out there and he shot his very first arrow. I know it was his first arrow because he goes, "That was effing badass." Just the bow going off and
Yeah.
hitting the target, and he's shooting like 10 yards at a bale. And then I didn't realize I'm in there just plugging away with my bow, just shooting at my stuff. And at the end, I just went over and introduced myself and said, "Hey, man, I said, you look like you're new to archery. If you want to, if I'm ever in here, feel free to, I'm a knowledge base for you." And he goes, "Man, he's got a recurve, So I'm looking up to him because I shoot compound. I've shot a recurve, my grandpa's old one a long time ago. And he goes, "Man, I've been watching you shoot your bows. I got to get me one of those one day." And I'm like, "Dude, I've got to get me one of those one day. Like, we got to give each other lessons here, whatever." But it was
Yeah.
just like you said, the point of seeing somebody just shoot that first arrow, watching it hit wherever it hits in the target, going, "Okay, there's a click moment." But then, you're talking to the other. I don't know why this popped up in my head, but I was at Academy Sports the other day too, just checking some stuff out, and I just saw this dude. And we all generally know the military guys by the haircut, like
Mhm.
within a certain boundary, we can tell, But there's
Yeah.
this guy, he's in the archery aisle. He's just, Academy. I honestly don't even know what arrows they carry. I didn't look, but you just take one glance at them. You're like, those aren't the arrows I shoot. I'm not even going to bother looking at them. And this guy's over there. He's like pulling all these arrows out and like just trying, and he's like pulling different ones of different brands together and clumping them together. And like it took every fiber of my body not to go over there and be like, "Bro, like, you look new. I don't want, I should have
Yeah.
done it. I just like didn't want to overstep my bounds." But the same thing, like just getting someone into that, just watching guys get into that sport, you're like, there's that pull in that community with these guys that they can expect of like, we all want to help each other out. Like there's definitely something there. You're getting into a safe community, and you want to make sure the people involved in it that way. I love that you guys take the time to vet these people too, and it's bigger than the mission. How many ambassadors do you guys have currently?
I think we have 12. I'm gonna have to pull up my own website so I don't lie to you. So not including like our board members, the people we have here in Virginia, 10. So we got 10 ambassadors currently, and then plus myself, my co-founder, my wife, and the rest of our board members here in Virginia.
Okay.
So, and our philosophy on that is, we'll go through spurts. We've got one guy that we just brought on that's not on the website, but I did count him. We kind of want to grow as we can afford to, because I don't want, I mean, I do want 50 ambassadors right now. I'd love to have an ambassador in every state, but then, how can I support them? Because when you come on as an ambassador too, and you may already have the means to, hey, I've already got donors lined up in my community, and I've got 3 bows sitting here, and I can get right to work. And if that's the case, then maybe we can look at that. But a lot of people, when they start off as an ambassador, they need some help from us to get started, kind of figure things out. And whether that's with marketing materials, flyers, helping them host a shoot to raise awareness in their community, and then providing them with the bows. So as we grow here at, I guess, headquarters, we can then continue to expand that ambassador program. So I say all that to tell people, I encourage you to reach out, fill out the application, and then we kind of just put you in line. And as we feel that we can expand, we then give you the call and say, hey, you're on board. We get your address. Everyone gets a free hoodie. It's an ENDEX Pro Staff hoodie, and some materials, and then it's off to the races.
Yeah, man, very cool. We'll definitely make sure I'm pushing people to fill out that application as we run into them. No, that's pretty incredible. And then, so we know how you get involved in the apply online if you're looking to be an ambassador. And then, as far as you said, your vets, you got to make sure they're kind of the right fit. That archery is a good fit for them. They're not in a different space where maybe this is kind of a different type of program for a different level of person dealing with different level of issues. But how do you guys ultimately find the heroes that you guys do get involved? Do they apply somewhere, or do people refer them? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've we've had referrals. I'm sure some people will listen to this and then send us an email and say, hey, I just got out of the military, heard about you guys, and I'm interested in getting into archery. And we'll have a conversation with them, and maybe that works out. But I would say the biggest way that we identify our vets is by having our ambassadors integrated into the veteran and first responder communities local to them. So, excuse me. So for me personally, as far as the veteran aspect goes, every Friday here in the city of Lynchburg, we have this monument terrace. It's a staircase, and each flight of stairs is dedicated to a different war or campaign in our nation's history. So every Friday for the last 2,140 weeks, veterans have gathered there.
Wow.
So we've got members of the American Legion, the VFW, the Marine Corps League. It's just everyday veterans. Sometimes there's 50, sometimes there's 200. I've met, new heroes there through that, or they'll say, hey, I know of a guy. So it's stuff like that. I'm also involved in the American Legion. I'm also involved in the Knights of Columbus here in town. So those civic organizations are definite feeders for us. But then, yeah, I would say the next biggest thing is going to be referrals. Veterans leave the military, like our new ambassador in North Carolina. He's retiring from the Marine Corps and he's becoming a firefighter. Well, now he just dove into a ready pool of heroes who experience trauma every single day. And he can look around his firehouse and be like, you're about to learn archery, buddy. Come on.
No, that's very cool, man. And I think camaraderie and all this stuff kind of goes with it, like you said, jumping from one community to another in the firehouse world compared to the Marines and then the archery community. That just community in general, you got to be involved, because that's where these people want to be, is in a community where people think like them, or they can feel like they can talk to them and that kind of stuff anyway. And if God's involved in it, it just kind of organically happens too, right? Like things click, conversations happen, and people get referred. So if someone has somebody in mind, like if maybe they're not a hero themselves or whatever the case is, but they've got, hey, I know this person, I think this might be a really cool fit for them. Can they do it on the website too? Like refer people there, or shoot you guys an email?
Yep. Shoot us an email, contact@endexarchery.org, and that's ENDEX. And I guess I'll explain that real quick. So, as you know, in the military, index means end of exercise. And so for us, I look at a lot of people's approach, and even my own approach to mental health when I came home from Afghanistan was, alcohol, risk-seeking behavior. When I spent years in law enforcement trying to do the most dangerous things possible. But then, people get worse than that. You've got drugs, people are running around on their wives, just all this negative stuff. To me, it's an exercise in futility. It's not helping you. So end that exercise and let's give you a healthy coping mechanism. So yeah, ENDEX, Index Archery, contact@endexarchery.org. You can shoot us a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or through our website. There's a contact link that'll auto-generate that email. I'll also say, again, when we talk about PTSD, we talk about veterans, law enforcement, heroes, we talk about archery. The image in most people's minds is men. My wife, who is also an Air Force veteran, runs a program we call ENDEX Rosies. So hearkening to Rosie the Riveter and the massive contributions that women make in the service community. So we have a program that's dedicated to growing that female space and integrating them better into the archery community. When we have the proving ground built, our goal is to run a couple reps a year where it is men and male mentors, but we want to have some female only reps as well, where they come out and it's a community of women. And hopefully for those events, I'm not even seen. I'm in the background and my wife and our female ambassadors can run that whole program. It's not to discriminate. It's just, it's different, right? Men oftentimes heal shoulder to shoulder. Women oftentimes heal face to face. So there's even different approaches to mental health when it comes to dealing with men versus women. But I also want women to have that space that they need because, women are strong. And my experience in the military, working with women, I've got a lot of respect for what they do and what they bring to the fight. Part of that is we're looking at male dominated careers when it comes to, the veterans and the first responders. And in that, if men already have this stigma that, hey man, like you just got to bury this stuff because that's the manly thing to do. Women even more so because they're already fighting to prove that, hey, I belong here. So when it comes to a mental health issue, what studies show is they're less likely in those career fields to reach out for help because they don't want just, a perceived one more thing going against them. Oh, you're a woman and you're also dealing with mental challenges. And again, I'm not a woman, so it's hard for me to kind of like speak to this, but I hope my point's getting across is that they feel less likely or less pressure to reach out because men don't even do it, right? And that's the other thing that we try to break down is that stigma, right? Because again, we've all heard that, hey, it's just pain is weakness leaving the body type of thing. And when it comes to PTSD, that's weakness. And when it comes to your problems, you're supposed to just bury it. That's what men do. But I disagree. I consider our bodies to be like our house, right? And if your brain is broken, well, what happens when something breaks in your house? For me, what does a real man do? What does a real dad's dad do? He gets on YouTube or he already knows how to fix it. Your sink's broken. You're going to get home from work and you're going to freaking fix it.
Yep.
Because you're a man. Your car breaks. It's like, wait a minute. You pay some dude to change your oil, change it yourself, bro. That's what men look at. And then you take physical fitness, right? If you're out of shape and you hit the gym and you start getting in really good shape, well, then suddenly like people are celebrating you on Instagram. They're like, look at the transformation this guy made, or look at the transformation this woman made. But for some reason, when it comes to our brains, we look at that differently. And to me, that shouldn't be the case. A man gets in there and fixes his shit. He handles his business and he gets his house back in order. So we need to change that narrative as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, sorry. Taking notes over here, just like crazy.
Absolutely.
So well, I'm married to an active duty Air Force, just badass of an airman, and she's man, the fight, like you said, that women have, like stuff that she'll bring home, and I'm just like, it's easy for me to be like, oh, just shrug it off, let it go. But man, it's a different lifestyle for a woman in the military period. The stigma is different, and the way people react to things is totally different. And she was just telling me a story the other day that somebody she was talking to there had an opportunity to take a command overseas, and that person went through this whole like crazy process where dudes were like basically putting them under fire um, because they were having issues with like how they were managing or how they were communicating or something like that. If a man would have said the same thing to a lower level male soldier or male airman or whatever, it would have been a totally different response. But ultimately nothing came of it because they were doing their job. They were doing what they're supposed to do. They were just putting the line down and saying, hey, this is how we have to do things. This is our job. Let's do it. But yeah, it's a totally different world. And to the point where like, something as simple as like going to the grocery store, even like, if someone asks the question, hey, you guys, either you two military? And I always like point back. I'm like, yeah, she is, and they always look back and like, oh, you're not? I'm like, nope, she is. But it's just like the world it's a different lens. It's a male oriented career field and people's minds are kind of fixated on that. But something as simple as communication comes across different if it's a man versus a woman in a military setting. And my wife just happens to be, I tell her all the time, like, you're going to be that first nurse practitioner that gets, full bird colonel. Like she's just wired for it, or whatever. But her being that like strong, like woman in that workplace, it comes across totally different than if you had a dude sitting across from you from the table saying the same thing. It's just different. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a great point there. And women leading women is a powerful thing too. And women sharing perspectives with men, it's a totally different thing. You get something different from, if I came to you with an issue man to man versus me going to my wife with it, we're going to get two totally different perspectives on the subject. So definitely a lot of power there. And then you mentioned, men are always like, the mantra of like pain leaving the body, but part of handling your business is getting pain out of your body too. And when you're having internal pain, you want that pain to leave your body. So like you said, take care of your business and do it. And then, get rid of that because you're going to be better because of it later. And you're going to get rid of that pain that you can't deal with pain without getting it out of your body, I guess is in the emotional side, the brain side. It's just a different thing. And then, at the very end there, you said something that like I've been working on a lot of myself here lately and through like workouts and getting up, like forcing myself to get up at 4 a.m. It's something I felt like I needed to do for a long time and finally just like been hammering myself to do it and just spending dedicated time with God at the beginning of my day where nothing else can distract me and all that. And I had a crazy message the other day, like out of nowhere, God's like, you just need to spend some time making your house a home. And at first I'm like literally like I'm on the treadmill doing my weighted walk or whatever. And I'm like looking around like, okay, my wife decorates, like maybe I need to spend more time in the house. And then like the longer I sat with it though, it was like, no, you need to take care of what's in here and fix this. Like, because, your wife, like anything in life, it is your wife, your family is the first reaction from it. But like, me as a man, if I'm not taking care of what's in here and making sure I've got my stuff straight and I'm just on the best path I can be and in the best mental space I can be, that affects everything around me and it makes people feel unsafe
Yeah.
that are around you. It makes and they know things about you that you'll never know because you think you're covering it up or you think you're hiding it or you think you're dealing with it well, and in reality you're just like you're not allowing anybody else to feel at home when they're with you. And that's a big part of that community piece or your family or whatever else. So I love that you said that because that's literally a message a couple of weeks ago that like just kind of blew my mind a little bit for myself personally. I was like, okay, look, what I'm doing here is more about getting me in that alignment I need to be so I can
Hmm.
ultimately be that person that allows people around me to feel like they're at home with me in the room or me in the room with them or whatever. So yeah, a lot of power in that, man. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's, I think what you're describing too is a transformation, and that's part of what we're about. Our logo includes a buffalo, and I'm sure most people that listen to this have heard the story. The buffalo is the only animal that will run headfirst into a storm, and our buffalo faces to the left, as if it were a timeline, because that storm, your trauma is behind you, right? So we want you to turn around and face that storm, face those demons, and run through it. But I had a really impactful conversation with a guy. We were working on him becoming one of our heroes. But I sat down, this guy for lunch, and again, making sure that archery is going to be the fit for him. And he was another guy that had worked in law enforcement. He spent 10 years working crimes against children, and he had a lot of struggles. But he asked, has anyone come through your program and gotten back to the person they were before the trauma? And I told him no, and he kind of looked a little defeated. But then I told him, like that's not the point of our program. That's impossible. You can't go back and be the person you were before that trauma. But you can either choose to let that trauma define your life and damage you, or you can achieve what we call post-traumatic growth, and you can face that trauma and come through the other side stronger. And it takes work, and I think it takes a lifetime of work. I'm not a mental health professional. This is what I do. But for me, the things that I've dealt with in my career, plus Afghanistan, there's a lot of stuff there. And there are still times where I get down. There are still times where it affects me. The anniversary, December 21st, every year that rolls around and I see my teammates' faces across multiple social media platforms, it still affects me. But now I have an outlet for it, and I can recognize that immediately. If I have a negative thought, or if I start to slide into a slump, I go shoot my bow first. And that allows my head to clear and me to start working on that plan. It allows me to recenter and say, hey, I've got so much in life to be grateful for. It reminds me to pray, just all these different things, right? That I can go to that bow and again, walk away from that experience in that archery session, a better man than, years past where it starts to bother me and then I let it slip and I let it fester and I just become, a bad person. So I want that message to be clear to people too. It's not about getting back to who you used to be. It's becoming who you were meant to be, and the best version of yourself going forward.
Yeah, man. No, I love that. I love that so much because it's easy. I think all of it, especially I would say men, I'm sure women deal with the same thing, but like you look back at like your quote unquote glory days, right? Like where you used to be able to be this football star in high school, or like, I don't know what your story is, but if there was something about your youth that was awesome, and then this thing happened, whether it was war or military or just some crazy life event, if you weren't even in the military, listen to this, like maybe you lost a job, maybe I don't know what it is, but like it's easy to like look at that downhill portion of what you had happen and go, God, I'm not the same as what I used to be. But I think I love that you called it post-traumatic growth, because I think in any situation, like God gives us free will, we have the opportunity to sit down, and if we're rooted right, and if we've made our house a home and we have our eyes in the right direction, like you just have that opportunity to be like, man, I just got humbled hard. Like I need to sit down, I need to get down on my knees, and I just need to just sit in this moment. And like I think in men especially, I think we always, like you said, fix it, like with the kitchen sink type thing. Like we're just fixers, so we always assume or think there's just this thing that we can do that'll magically just take care of it and make that drip stop. But there's some drips that just can't be stopped. God needs to do it, or whatever. And there's a different. It might look different than us just saying, okay, like this is what fix looks like versus maybe what God thinks fix looks like. But there's always a growth opportunity, and I don't know any of us that probably can realistically look back on our lives and go, I look back now and I thought, when I first started my park ranger career, for me is a good example. Like I just thought, man, I was this hot shot. I've got all this experience, these dudes around me, like they got nothing. Like I could crush them, And I look back on that kid that I was, and I'm like, smack that kid in the back of the head and be like, dude, like slow down a little bit. Like, let me show you what real life experience looks like. Like the guy that I was isn't the guy I want to be. I'm glad I'm where I'm at now, and all the life lessons I've learned and everything else. And even something as absolutely crazy as war, like, we make an active choice to be a part of that when we sign up, and it happens and it does its thing. But like that can play a piece of our story, but it doesn't have to be like the end of the story. Now it can be like, okay, that was literally otherworldly insane, but I'm still here. I can take that next step. I can walk out my front door today and go shoot my bow and do whatever. And there's something coming. Like sometimes there's just power in sitting in the space. That's something I'm learning right now. Like personally, is like root myself where I'm at now, so I can allow God to just do His work and grow. Because I'm also like I'm a fixer. I'm a grasper. Like reaching for that next thing too fast sometimes can be detrimental to that like ultimate healing that can happen. And sometimes something as simple as just slowing down, getting out, shooting your bow, taking 10 arrows out in the backyard and just letting them fly and just staying still in the moment. You can allow God maybe to heal your heart a little bit and find you in a
Absolutely.
place that you weren't ready to be found, or you don't feel like you're ready to be found. But sometimes those quiet moments is just what it takes to be like, okay, I'm where I'm at, you know?
Yeah, and I'll let you in on part of our process, and this is something that you can steal or anyone listening can steal. Um, and I'll give the reasoning behind it, right? So and I don't know if I've made it clear. I was in the FBI for 6 years and then left that job last September. But when I was in the FBI, me and my squad were involved in a shooting. And when that happens, you don't have to go to this, but you're allowed to go to what's called a post-critical incident seminar. And that's what I'm modeling our proving grounds off of, because it was a week filled with just all these different wellness modalities and exposure to that to help you find the methods that work for you. Um, One of the classes that I sat in on, and I kind of thought it was going to be stupid, but you kind of pick and choose the ones that you're really interested in, and then you just find a few, and they encourage you to find some that, hey, if you think this would never work for you, try it out, at least get exposure. So it was art therapy. So I sit down at this table and I've got this therapist, and they talk us through the process. But it's basically, you just try to clear your mind, and whatever comes to mind, usually it's that whatever negativity you're dealing with, you just start drawing. And for me, it was like random colors on the page, and I'm shading and I'm kind of blending, and I just make this blob of different color that kind of looks like a sunburst, or I guess it would look like oil on water type of thing, different colors. That's what I drew. And she goes, all right, so you spent about 30 minutes drawing that. Does it look cool? You put everything into it. Yeah, you're proud of it. Now crumble it up. Now let's open it up. Now crumble it up. And then you go through this process of basically destroying this thing you just put all this effort into. And then you walk away from that, and it was like just taking a big breath. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, that actually worked for me. So I stole that process because I like to build arrows. That's another rabbit hole that you can go down in the archery world. That's very therapeutic because you can hyper focus on it.
Yeah.
So whether you want to build an arrow or you just have an arrow, it's better though if you get a nice wrap and you spend the time putting the fletchings on it. But while you're doing that, I want you to think about whatever is bothering you, and it could be, obviously you got to know yourself a little. Don't trigger yourself too much and end up with a breakdown. But if you can channel some of that negativity into the process of building this arrow, you're just thinking about it, and it could be a combat deployment, or it could just be, hey, I'm stressed out about bills. My boss is an a-hole at work and I'm stressed out about that, or whatever you got going on. The kids have way too much soccer practice, and it's stressing me out. Build you an arrow while you're thinking about that. Then go find you a nice steel target, but don't shoot the insert. Blow that arrow up. And just the release of knowing, and you can take it a step further. And if you're into meditation, or if you can just center yourself for a minute, just sit there with that arrow in your hands and in your lap or whatever, and just think and imagine all those negative thoughts leaving your brain, traveling down your arms into your hands, your fingertips, and filling up that arrow, imbuing it with whatever negativity you got, and just launching into a steel buck. Or just launch it into your target. And imagine whenever it hits that target, all that negativity splatters off the arrow and flies across the yard. It's there now. It's done. And you can do that over and over. And I usually do that. My first arrow of the day, I draw back and I anchor, and I just think, hey, I'm just gonna breathe all of the negativity, any stress that I have right now. I'm just gonna breathe it into these fletchings, and I'll blow on that arrow, and then I'll launch it into the target. It's gone. Um, won't work for everyone, but for people like me, it's very therapeutic just to do that. So I encourage people to try that, and if you like that method, give me some feedback on Instagram or something. But again, when we say archery is therapy, if all you ever do is shoot your bow in your backyard, yeah, it's working, because your focus becomes the bow. Your subconscious can take over and start to process that trauma. But when you start adding some of these other components, you start adding the community into it. It's just added benefits, added layers of security there.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And they just had a Ironman Outdoors. They're a men's only group that gets guys will open up when there's no women around in ways they will, one if there's a woman around. So they kind of do like hunting retreats or fishing retreats, and it's all guys. You sign up for all walks of life, and the whole point is same thing. Like you do your hunting, and that's all cool, and you're fishing, whatever. But then at night or different strategic times throughout the day, they have what they call men's talks, and they just get guys and they open up topics and let the dudes rip and whatever. But one of the tactics that it talked about, Patrick talked about on that podcast, was they ask guys sometimes to write the biggest stressor they've got going on, or the thing that they've been carrying around the most that they're dealing with, or the thing they don't want to tell their wife the most, or like whatever it is. Write it on. They go out to the river and they pick up these rocks and they bring them in. Everyone pick a rock. You write that down on this rock, and you carry it around in your pocket for the whole trip, like the 4-day, 5-day trip, whatever it is. And at the end, they all get together and they take that rock and they look at it and they like, okay, like they explain about the weight of just carrying that thing around, and they throw it in a pile in the middle at the end of it, and just the idea that you're getting rid of that somehow. So I love the blowing up it on a steel buck. I'll have to try that sometime. You might even make like some custom ENDEX arrow wraps. Like you get to build your arrow and you get it right like on the white arrow wrap or something, like your thing, and just let her rip, dude. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And custom wraps are hopefully coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah. We want to grow to all that stuff, but yeah, it's super exciting.
No, you guys have a really cool thing going on, man. I'm so glad we got linked up with you guys and got a chance to have this opportunity to talk with you, and it's been awesome for me even just to connect with you on this stuff. And I guess if you got a second, what's been the most impactful moment that you've experienced? And I know there's probably a bajillion of them so far in the time you guys have been around, but like in your mind, like what sticks out as the aha moment, maybe even that you had where you're like, okay, like maybe it's excuse me, a specific hero story, or just something that's happened or whatever that you've been like, man, like thank God I'm doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah, there's been a couple of those. So I'll say one. There's a particular hero, where just every now and then he'll shoot me a text message, and it'll be a picture of his group, and it'll be something along the lines of like, "Man, I don't say thank you enough for what you've done." Um, and it chokes me up a little bit every time I see it, just because I know it's genuine, right? So I love that aspect of it. There's another hero that we worked with that, when we first got started, definitely a lot of social isolation. Didn't like going out in the public. Um, was not open with their wife at all. And then through, we started. It was just he and I with a bow. He was coming over to my house almost every day, and we were just shooting. And then I took him to a 3D shoot. And at first he was kind of closed off, but then he starts seeing the guys around and starts joking with guys and realizes like, oh, these dudes are like grunts. Because it's here in the mountains of Virginia, it's a bunch of redneck dudes, right?
Yeah.
They get along. They would get along well with infantry guys, which is what this dude was. So now he's laughing, he's having a good time. And then it was like, I don't know, a couple months into this process, he calls me up and I'm like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, "I'm at the grocery store by myself." And I was like, man, like this, he wouldn't do that before. Someone had to go with him. His service dog had to go with him, but he was at the grocery store. Um, and then through that, he started to open up to his wife. She started shooting a bow. He finally felt comfortable enough to say like, "Hey, whenever I'm in my moods or whenever I'm having issues, like this is what I experienced in Iraq. This is what I was going through. This is what I'm thinking about." And he never, according to him, he never would have told her that before. So that's huge, And then I had another hero talking to me, and it was just like, they had been praying for just a community of men just to come into their lives because, they went through this phase where socialization meant getting drunk, partying, again, all those negative behaviors. And then this person became a father and was like, I can't be doing that anymore. But now I have no friends. And we just came into that person's life at the right time and introduced him to some other heroes and to the archery community. And I don't know, man, like when you're having a conversation like that, there's emotion to it. And we both felt it. It's super special. And
Yeah.
I think for me and all of my ambassadors, we've had those moments that just let us know like, hey, we're doing good work and this work matters. And then for me personally, there was an incident that happened when I was still in the FBI. So the story with Afghanistan is the patrol that my guys got killed on. I was supposed to be like the number 2 guy on that patrol. My roommate is the one who planned it, and then right before him, so we operated in pairs of agents. You had a team lead and an alpha or a secondary agent. Then you had a linguist and an analyst. So we kind of like a 4-man team. On our missions, we take 2 4-man teams out. So I was supposed to be the team lead for that second team, but I had a lot of work. I had some other missions outside the wire that week, plus some source meets and stuff. So anyway, I go to my roommate. I'm like, hey man, me and my partner, you mind taking us off, bringing the other team with you, because we've got a lot going on. So in my mind, what the enemy was telling me the whole time is this guy died standing where you should have been standing. It should have been you, type of thing. So that's where that survivor's guilt came from. Well, fast forward, I'm in the bureau. I plan an arrest operation on a pedophile, and me and some of my partners from our task force and the local police department, we're going to go out and arrest this guy. And the night before that kicks off, I get a phone call from our higher ups, and it's like, hey, you're not going on the arrest tomorrow, and you're needed elsewhere, type of thing. In the moment, I was frustrated, obviously, because I planned the mission. I wanted, that's the best part of the job, is going out and arresting dudes, especially pedophiles.
Yeah.
Get a lot of pleasure out of that. So I can't go, so I'm a little bit pissed about it. But that morning I show up early and I take, the packets, the warrants, all the paperwork, and I hand it to the agent that's going to be taken over for me. And when I see him and the team kind of leave the door, suddenly, I don't know if it was a panic attack, but I spent about 3 hours trying not to puke into a trash can. All that I could think about was, shit, someone's going to die standing where I'm supposed to be standing. It's going to happen again. And I was kind of in a moment of crisis. So, as a veteran, I've got access to the VA, and I call the VA. I had a psych doc from the VA at the time that I'd see, once every couple months. No response from the VA, no response, no response. Finally, I get a hold of someone, and I'm on hold for 20 minutes before they finally forward me to the wrong person, who then forwards me to the right person, who tells me they can get me in about 2 months.
Good grief.
And it's just like, man, this is why people are struggling. It's that lack of resources. But thankfully, because of what I do, and again, me being introspective and recognizing what's going on, I was able to turn to my coping mechanism and say, all right, like, can't get in to see a doc, but I got one at home. I got a therapist sitting right on the shelf, and so I go home and I start shooting my bow. And again, it takes me out of that, because my brain almost hit that fight or flight mode again. And it's completely irrational. But I was able to come down from that just by shooting a couple arrows. I was able to kind of reset, and then I was able to think clearly and come up with a plan and say, all right, 1, everyone's already come back safe, so you can stop freaking out. 2, you shouldn't have had that thought to begin with, because this is not Afghanistan. And one thing about the FBI is we over plan to make these operations safe and secure, and the dudes who are doing the job know what they're doing. Not a rational thought. 3, there's other help out there besides the VA. And now I was calm enough to kind of work through some of that and find someone to talk to. All that to say, for me, ENDEX started because of my own process with archery. And it's a constant reminder that not only am I the president of ENDEX Archery, but I'm also a patient of ENDEX Archery. And I hate to say patient, because again, we're not providing clinical medical care, but I'm a recipient of the therapies and all the good that we have to offer. It works for me. I need it just as much as the heroes that we're helping need it.
Yeah, man. No, that's huge. You're a student of the game. That's pretty incredible. And I think some of the most powerful things in life start that way. It's like you needed it, you found it, and then the ability to share that because you knew it worked for you. There's nothing. The Bible talks about no. Basically, there's nothing for one man that's not common for most or all men, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if something can help you, it can help somebody else. So the fact that you even had the wherewithal to be like, hey, how could I help that next guy do the same thing, or have this situation in your life to where you had the courage to take that step to do it? That's pretty powerful, and that's turning into something just super incredible, man. So yeah, definitely awesome. And it's cool hearing your own story. I wasn't expecting to get one about you. I was expecting to get one about somebody else. But the fact that the proof's in the pudding, you got put in a situation that triggered something in you that could have gone a totally different direction, but you had that tool that you had built and knew about yourself to go, okay, last time this happened, I could go do this, and it was good. And ENDEX Archery is here because of it, and it's helping other people, man. That's so cool. So
Yeah.
cool.
No, I appreciate that. And it's like, I got to hold myself accountable. How can I expect others to talk about their trauma and get help if I can't do it?
Yeah.
And I find the more that I tell my story and talk about these things, the easier it gets. But it's my hopes that if someone sees me doing it and they're like, all right, man, if that guy can talk about it, then I'll talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. You know, bringing back the Ironman Outdoors guys, I asked him, you know, at the end, I'm going to ask you the same thing, but I said, you know, tell us something good. Give us one piece of advice for whatever. And he said, Tycho is his acronym. He talked about acronyms earlier. Tycho, take off your camo. And at first I'm like, okay, but the whole point is like, you know, the point of their men's conversations is get everybody in the room and rip that mask off you've been hiding, buddy, because we're going to, you know, you have a space now, you can be vulnerable and whatever. But I think that's big. So leading by example and showing somebody what you can do, and whether that's being vulnerable and opening up about a story or just getting out there and doing this thing that someone else might not try, you know, like archery or something because they've never been exposed to it before, whatever. Um, that's huge, being able to do that and just it makes the next guy feel comfortable to try it or do it or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely power in that too. Take off your camo or tell your story, because someone will have the courage because you did it. They'll have the courage to do it for themselves, and there's someone behind them, and there's someone behind that guy. And yeah, it's a train, man.
Absolutely.
No, that's so cool, man. Well, I know it's a little bit past what I promised you for the hour and a half so far anyway, but I guess I'm
No,
going to
I
ask
love
you.
it, man.
Yeah, heck, it's been an awesome conversation. I want to ask you the same thing. If you have one thing you wanted to share with anybody listening to this podcast, word of encouragement, you know, whatever it is, like what would you want to share?
Yeah, I guess for a word of encouragement, just take it from me. You've heard my story. If you are one of the people that you're looking into that dark place, you know, there's other options out there. There's a community out there. And if archery is not your thing, we partner with other nonprofits, you know, Healing Waters, Project Healing Waters. You know, there's outlets out there. So just give those a try, right? All the negative behaviors, let's call it index on that, and let's find a healthy coping mechanism. And again, I'm proof. I'm so grateful that there is life after trauma, abundant, beautiful life after trauma. But it starts with you recognizing that you need help and then reaching out. And then I guess another thing that I'll say for people who want to help, not help index, but just do some good in the world. If you've got an idea out there, just make it happen, and then you can make it good later. I'm a product of South Louisiana public education, and I was able to start a nonprofit to help heroes through archery. Whatever dream you have, whatever way that you want to help, you can do it too. Start today. Start it with a Facebook or Instagram page and just go from there. But just make it happen and then make it good later.
I love that, man. I love that so much. Yeah, I'm a product of that. With I got my wife with the hammer on the back over here saying, "Hey, you got all these ideas, knock them out of your head, make them happen, man." But you're 100% right. Just find the smallest way you can take action towards a step and do it. Just Nike, just do it.
Yeah. And then from there, the key to success is just never stop.
Yep. Yep.
It's hard and you're not going to have time for it some days. Cool. Well, make sure you pick it back up tomorrow. Just never stop. And you'll get to where you're meant to be with it.
Yeah, 100%. I think God works in the action. You know, if someone's sitting on the couch, you can't do a whole lot with them. But if they're walking, boy, watch out. You'll be running
Yeah.
one day. You'll be pushing you. That wind will catch your sails, and you'll take off like you wouldn't believe. But that's so cool, man. We'll wrap up with that. So take action. Don't be afraid. And if you're looking in the darkness, man, there's places for you. So don't be afraid to reach out to anybody. You can reach out to Jason via ENDEX there at the website, or Praying and Slaying. We have a drop your line box as well. If you want to get connected somewhere, we're more than happy to help you too. But as far as ENDEX Archery specifically, tell us your website one more time and contact information one more time for anybody looking to get involved or donate or just reach out in general to you guys.
Yeah, so that's www.endexarchery.org, indexarchery.org. Email is going to be contact@indexarchery.org, and then ENDEX Archery across the social media sphere.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, Jason. Be sure to check those out. We'll have all the links in the show notes as well, so people can check those out, and we'll be sharing on social as well with that. But man, Jason, this has been a pretty incredible conversation, man. It's always good to get a fellow Air Force person to have a conversation with in general. So that was special, and this blessed me, and I hope it blessed everybody else on here, man. I can tell you that. So
I appreciate you so much, brother, for the time and the outlet and the exposure. Just wish you all the success as well.
hey, appreciate it, brother. Well, definitely be waking up early. Got to meet Jason an hour and a half from here at 8:30, bright and early in the morning. Or not Jason, sorry, Nathan. We'll be shooting some bows and dropping some bows off. So be sure to shoot a little video of us dropping those off to him, so we can help share that on social media too for you guys to share or whatever. But just spread the word about what you guys are doing. I knew it was pretty cool, but getting to talk to you, it's an incredible thing you guys have going on. I'm looking forward to watching in the future and maybe even being a part of it someday. So
Absolutely, brother.
all right, brother, man. Well, have a good one, and thank you so much for coming on.
Take care.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Well, there you have it, guys. That was Jason McCoy with ENDEX Archery, and holy cow, was that an awesome conversation, man. It always is when we're doing this podcast. I feel like you get these guests on and you have a general idea of how the conversation is going to go. And man, it just takes us down a spiritual rabbit hole in the best possible way. And Jason was no different, man. That was awesome. Man, the verses, I've got verses for this one. So much awesome stuff came out of this conversation. And ENDEX Archery is such an awesome organization, and all the just amazing things that they're doing and able to do, and all the unique ways that you get to just physically watch God's hand working in this organization, and those things that just, there's 0% chance it can be a coincidence, man. So I love seeing that and the testimony of that. You know, in the first verse that comes to mind here, you know, for those battling with PTSD and who maybe have been to a dark place and can't get it out of their mind or don't feel like they can shake it, is just remember, you know, 1 Corinthians 10:13, the temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show a way out so you can endure. Man, and then he brings people like Jason along, and he puts tuggings on their heart to start organizations like this and give people a healthy outlet for something that might be going through. But don't ever hesitate to reach out, whether it be stigma or whatever else could be holding you back. There's things out there, and there's a way out every single time, and God will never put something in your path that someone else hasn't already shown that it can be overcome in a positive way. And the next verses that come to mind here is Romans 8:31 and 32. What shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can ever be against us? Since He did not spare even His own Son, but He gave Him up for us all, won't He also give us everything else? Man, and just a couple reasons for that. Number one, you watched so much of this testimony here about ENDEX Archery and the way God's moving through the connections that He's making through people, and just the numbers and the things that are falling into place, you know, at their own timing or at the perfect time and the perfect dollar amount and the perfect number of bows. It's just such a cool testimony with that. But then also, you know, the sacrifice that Jason and his other team guys out there, you know, the sacrifices they had to go through to have their own story, to be able to have these opportunities to help other vets who may be going through something similar is just crazy. You know, so the people who've made the ultimate sacrifice or have, you know, raised their hand and volunteer of making a sacrifice for people that they love, there's no other thing that you can do that's greater in life than that. And being able to give back to those who might be struggling with the dark side of what comes with that sacrifice sometimes. Is what these organizations are all about, and ENDEX Archery is all about, is healing people through archery one step at a time. So guys, with that, man, I'm going to let you guys get back to it. What an awesome episode. Go check out everything ENDEX Archery all across social media. I'll be meeting up Nathan after this podcast here tomorrow to go actually donate some bows that you heard about there in the podcast. Super stoked about that there was a reason I held on to them all these years. Can't wait to go shoot some bows with Nathan from ENDEX and give a couple bows to him to hopefully reach an archer down here in Texas to help them out with this PTSD support. So with that, guys, go do something awesome for somebody, go shoot your bow, and as always, keep praying and slaying.